like the changing of the laws, because one of the things that the judicial activism era, one of the most important things about the originalist is the originalist had no intention for yours truly to vote. No intention for me to have any kind of thing.
Females couldn't vote.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no. And a lot of people couldn't vote.
Not me, for sure.
That was not changed by an activist judge, even though there were people who would sue and do all of that kind of stuff. It ended up being changed in the legislature. But the suits, the lawsuits, the rulings were the things that move those things forward. So a lot of you have to have judges that are making these different rulings, interpreting things differently, using judicial reasoning that can be judged and second guessed and stand up to appeal and whatnot in order to get the momentum behind it. If it doesn't have that very complicated, complex process, it doesn't get the discussion in the public sphere that it needs.
Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Ted Johnson, Stacia Boyd, Riley Van Dyke, and Michelle Walters. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome to Third Side Convo, where we leave the names out and dig into what's really dividing us. And tonight, it's one of the most powerful and least understood forces in American politics, judicial activism. Now, is the court supposed to interpret the law? Are judges, upholding the Constitution, or are they shaping it or rewriting it to match their own politics? Depending on who you ask, judicial activism is either the last hope for justice in a broken system or a runaway train of unelected power. We'll talk about recent rulings, a little bit about the history, and the blurry line between interpretation and invention. And, of course, we'll try to answer the big question. What happens when the branch that's just supposed to stay above politics starts looking just as partisan as the rest? So what we're going to do is we're going to start out. Now, Ted, judicial activism is something that one could look at as being, certainly an issue on the right now because it always seems to be the one in power. But this was used back in earlier administrations, wasn't it? So what do you see as the issue we're dealing with right now?
I think it's a matter of you view a document that was written in the 1780s as is it static or is it dynamic? And I think our culture is dynamic. Therefore, the document that governs us needs to be dynamic as well. And therefore, let's just get an example. Back when the document was written, the Constitution was written, it was people were allowed to own people. The modern bullet wasn't invented yet. They didn't know what a virus was. And I think society's changed a great deal in 240 years. And I think the document needs to change with it. And that means the judges have to make rulings pertaining to the conditions in today's current culture.
Okay, over on the right, anybody want to jump in on that one based on what you know? Since you only found out about this topic, let's say 15 minutes ago, fire away as an expert here, Michelle.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Riley, if you want to go ahead and take it. If not, I'll step in.
So, I'm a constitutional absolutionist, right? So I believe that it's the founders had an idea, right? And they were forward thinking. Of course, things that need to be changed also definitely need to they need to have some help. Sorry, my dog's barking. But yeah. Good grief. Sorry, the dog's barking.
We can't hear him. It's okay.
So, yeah, no, when the document was wrote and oh, shit. Hold up.
Jump in, Michelle.
All right.
Jump in.
When we sit there and we look at judicial activism, though, there's two ways to be able to sit there and interpret the Constitution, though. It's going to be, contextual interpretation and also be like a strict constructionism of it. And what we're seeing right now, though, is a lot of the higher courts that are actually taking a much more proactive approach into being able to interpret and personalize, their own personal agendas, their goals, their political aspirations, and trying to expand, in my opinion, some of the interpretation of the Constitution on their own personal will to keep in line. And I understand trying to keep in line with the ever-changing viewpoints of our modern history compared to back when the Constitution was initially designed and interpreted. So
Got it.
it's very difficult.
Okay, Stacia, what do you see as the biggest problem going on right now with it?
Well, I think, first of all, the way I see this particular topic is that it's the difference between whether or not you're going to change your laws by legislation, or you're going to change your laws by judicial ruling. The problem is that there's theory and there's practice. In theory, when everything was designed, it should have been an idea where it's like, oh, we're going to change the law with the legislature, and then it's like the judges, the judiciary will come along and interpret that law to make sure that it matches up with the Constitution, follows the law, and then if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, matches the Constitution. Which is all well and good. But most people don't call it any kind of judicial activism until they don't go their way. It's only judicial activism or judicial something like that is if it goes the way you didn't want it to. Right. And at that point, then it becomes, oh, look at these, these politically motivated judges, as opposed to, but what if my guy won? If my side won, it's like, oh no, they're just correctly interpreting the law. And then if my guy lost, then it's like, oh wow, look at these judicial activists out there, legislating from the bench. I do think we see more of that right now with things that are, because I think we are more well-informed, or more informed of what's going on. I will say that there's a lot more things we see in rulings that keep people, I don't know, people were glued to their, newspapers when they were coming down with the Dred Scott decision.
Right. Probably not. Probably not. All right, Riley, now that you've muted your dog, we'll say, what's the scoop?
Yeah, he's put up. Yeah. So I would say that now that I can think, my dog's not barking, that when I believe that the founders had a distinct purpose when they were writing these laws. And when you start meddling with that and you start changing things, it's you have to go through it with a constitutional amendment, because the Supreme Court is there to kind of see if everything aligns with what the Constitution says. And if you don't have that check, right, whether it's blue or red, depending on the decision, it's my opinion that you cannot just start changing things, and the Supreme Court and then subsequently the judges beneath them making these kind of rulings. It gets kind of mucky, So
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Ted, bring us back into a little bit of clarity here. Because actually what I was really more talking about was literally this guy in South Dakota who can basically just overturn a policy of the current administration, that type of activism, as opposed to the judicial activism that goes on when they're trying to create laws as opposed to interpret.
And activism was supposed to be sit there and, to sit and have
can be both.
Of our rights, and then sometimes it's, they're trying to sit there and take into account their interpretation of the Constitution. So I understand, the symbolism behind it, but it doesn't always, play out correctly in practice. So sorry.
Okay, but Bob, back to your example about the judge in South Dakota or the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out here in California, notoriously liberal, is the fact that the founders, back to Riley, the founders put in the fact that a judge in an outlying district can make a ruling that affects the federals, but it's called the appeals court, is to give me a checks and balance. They put in the checks and balance to this very issue. And then, of course, it can be appealed again and all the way up to the Supreme Court. So the checks and balances are there. But I think what people have to strive for or understand is that one law that works in Louisiana in 1888 doesn't necessarily work in California in 1888. And that's what the things. I think we see it now. We see it in public preferences regarding abortion, access to birth control pills. What happens in Louisiana isn't necessarily good for California. And you see it in public opinion, and you see it all over the news.
Okay, good. Okay, keep going.
I think I'm going to add to that one is that the idea that a single judge can also stop something federal that's happening, normally it's like they're not overturning the law at that point. What they're doing is they're stopping, they're pausing it, they're stopping it now. It's an injunction, right? It's really, because and that point is like it's going to put a pause on it, and it's going to like again start that process where now it's going to be appealed, and it's going to go to this court or the next court and keep going up.
Right.
That is the process,
That's
and
the
that
system.
people don't like it is because most people don't have any patience, and because a lot of people don't like to lose.
No.
You know, I think that's an important one. There was like some of the injunctions that, again, there people thought was absolutely the best thing ever. Wasn't there a court in Texas that did an injunction that made like the birth control, or not the birth control, the mifepristone, the abortion pill, the quote unquote abortion pill, illegal all over the country? Wasn't that one of them? I
Yep.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think even like the Mormon Church tried to sit there and make it to where it was, you know what I mean, illegal for gays to get married and stuff like that. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's in California.
I definitely agree. Like you can't have, I mean, but speaking about abortion, you know, it's that was given back to the states, you know, or let's say like, for instance, like this whole immigration thing, right? I do agree with you that it is pausing and that it is delaying. And it kind of gets into the whole weeds about, well, what is the executive power and how much power does it really have when he can slap down, you know, the enemy alien act and basically get everybody out as quickly as possible, as if it's a military operation. That's what he's doing. And if the president of the United States is declaring war, then, you know, it does in some ways have to go through the House and the Senate.
You think?
But
No, the president can't. No. The legislature can declare war.
Right.
The
president
Congress
can
can
declare war.
declare war.
yeah, yes,
Yeah, president. Yeah. So you know how much president power does the president have? I can tell you, it's so easy. A third. He's got 1/3, and the Congress has 1/3. And just it's the separation of powers. We have three.
And one way to look at it is the founders looked at what happened prior to 1785 and the fact they were ruled by a king. And the king could come in and all of a sudden tell a farmer or a city merchant and say, well, your taxes just went up 25%. Why? Because England needs the money. So there's no representation. And therefore, this founders set up a system that was very slow. It took a lot of collaboration and cooperation to get anything major passed. The 2/3 vote in the Senate, for example, to overturn a law, or overturn a veto. Those things were designed by the founders, and it does not move fast.
All right.
Also, the first thing that the founders set up
but that's
was
why you
trash.
sit there and
They
have
set up the Articles of the Confederation first.
Right.
That was when the states had most of the power. It's like, and the Articles of the Confederation became very quickly a disaster. And like, oh no, this isn't going to work. We need a stronger federal government. And that's when they changed their own minds and said, yeah, we're going to scrap that and we're going to start over and we're going to do this. And
all right, we're taking our first break, everybody. Hold on. We're going to take our first break. We've got, listen, y'all are just so fast, you just can't stop, y'all. Y'all just want to keep talking. This is what it's all about. Please subscribe on Facebook, on YouTube, on thirdsideconvo.com, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tri-Beer Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
All right, before we dive in, I want to give everybody a quick update. Joe Boy has been working so hard. The Third Side Convo is now officially gone big time. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. We're on TV in Los Angeles and even radio in London. So if you've ever wanted to argue politics across the pond without leaving your living room, congratulations, you're there. And give us a holler if you'd like to join in our discussion, because it's just people sitting around talking about politics, and they're able to keep doing it. So, all right, here we are back to the show. And who'd like to lead us off in the second area? Let's go. Because we've go.
Because talking about like the changing of the laws, because one of the things that the judicial activism era one of the most important things about the originalist is the originalist had no intention for yours truly to vote. No intention for me to like have any kind of thing.
Females couldn't vote.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, and a lot of people couldn't vote.
Not me,
However,
for sure.
That was not changed by an activist judge, even though there were people who would sue and do all of that kind of stuff. It ended up being changed in the legislature. But the suits, the lawsuits, the rulings were the things that move those things forward. So a lot of you have to have judges that are making these different rulings, interpreting things differently, using judicial reasoning that can be judged and second guessed and stand up to appeal and whatnot in order to get the momentum behind it. If it doesn't have that very complicated, complex process, it doesn't get the discussion in the public sphere that it needs.
So we need these guys. We need
Yes.
them doing that, don't we? Okay, Michelle.
Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, absolutely, we do need this. And I mean, I think this is one of those to where I would probably be a little bit more appropriate, though, on having an attorney to be able to sit there and come in, because I mean, with a lot of these higher court judges that they're coming in and they're taking interpretation on things and they're enacting things that, you know what I mean, aren't necessarily in the legality of the Constitution. And I think that really, honestly, it should, you know what I mean, go about it in a variety of different ways compared to just, you know, like for our current administration to come in and do it executive orders where it's not necessarily a rule or a law. And I feel like we're starting to see that aspect of it, you know, with regards to some of our higher courts. They're wanting to sit there and enact their own personal will without going through the proper channels. And that's why we do have the balance of power. That's why we do have the separation of powers. And I think that there is, with regards to a lot of these judges, though, they're overreaching their positions.
How is it and why is it that this was not really enacted before? You know, all this stuff that they're doing is kind of relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Like before, I was reading the literature, you know, and before 1960, right? All of these it was rarely used, and it's very convenient that all of a sudden now that there's three strongholds of power in this current U.S. government, and this is really the only thing that they can really do. So I understand why it's happening, and to kind of go off of what Stacia said, it's like, you know, it is to slow things down, because what Trump is doing is throwing everything at the wall and
Can't say that with name.
Rejected.
Current administration. Yeah. Current administration.
Okay, here's one for you. Here's an example.
Yeah.
This happened 24 years ago. The city of San Francisco made gay marriage legal. The mayor of San Francisco was Gavin Newsom, now the governor. And that created such an uproar around the country that many people believe that George W. Bush in 2004 won the election because many people didn't want gays to get married and have abortions. But anyway, it's a long story. So in 2008, came a proposition called Proposition 8 that, written in large part by the Mormon Church, outlawed gay marriage. Yeah. And so here you had an executive order from a governing agency. You had then a voter approved proposition come through that the state Supreme Court then negated. So you had all three levels of government touched on this one issue. And I think it relates back to the fact that when the founders were writing in 1770, 1780, 1790, they realized that many Negroes were not equal, and therefore they were just seen as equal. You would never write that today in today's document. And same with gay marriage. It's completely changed. Many people accept it, not all, but many people accept it and consider it's part of everyday life. Why can't they have the same rights as you and I, or the same right to misery as you and I? And so the key thing is the culture changes, and should the law adapt? And I think that's what we're coming up to.
Well, I would, and again, going back to the founding fathers and their intention. I mean, for those of you guys, one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Jefferson, I just pulled it up because it's carved on the wall of the Jefferson Memorial and in Washington D.C. So if anybody wants to see it, you can go see it. And he wrote this in 1816, so many years after they had written all things. But basically, it was about this actual topic. He said, I'm not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, and new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change. And with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him as a boy, as a civilized society to remain ever under the regiment of their barbarous ancestors.
Barbarous.
The man who said it, that's what he said. He said we must change with the times as people grow, as we learn. That's what the man said. And I don't think it gets much more, founding fathery than Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, but Judge Scalia would argue against that. He's the one who was a real originalist on the Supreme Court. He died, 10, 12 years ago, but he fought against that very nature. Again,
he did, and it's like one of the interviews with him and Ginsburg, when the two of them would get interviewed together. It's like, and they would talk about those subjects, about things being changed. His position seemed to take that it's like if the change was going to come through, it had to come through the legislature, that the judges didn't get to change it. That was his main thing. And Ginsburg was saying yes, but the judges' rulings do change things. So that was definitely a difference between the two of them.
All right, well, let's give it over to the right a little bit. I know they're getting thrown off a little bit because the left had already been talking about this. We throw these guys in on the right, and dadgummit, they're doing fine. Just throw out there what you think. I mean, should the judges just be able to overrule anything? Whether or not it's the little things that are happening or the things that are happening in this current administration. Is a judge just can come in there and do it even if he has no people of any standing? I don't know. I don't want to get into I shouldn't be in the middle of the conversation. I just wanted to.
Okay. All right, Ryan.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You go and I'll go next.
I mean, I personally think that I like what Stacia was saying. That's an enlightening point from a guy I look up to. But I don't know. I just feel like it's definitely when we change. Just to kind of counter that point again, when we change too quickly, right? And there's not enough. There's still people alive that grew up in Jim Crow era, and that's very tough on people, right? And it's just I feel like that our society is evolving faster than we can really even kind of our human minds can rack around. And it freaks people out.
Absolutely. You know what though? Absolutely. Well, and I think that was one of the hard things though, and especially that we're in the age of technology though, where things are changing so rapidly, and they're changing at a pace though to where our legislative branches cannot be able to sit there and keep up with these ever evolving, circumstances, conditions, things where it is affecting our, our today, our tomorrow, our future. And it's a matter of, I think that for us as, an American citizens being able to sit there and take a step back and saying, okay, well, we want to be able to sit there and stay true to our constitutional rights, but how do we effectively and quickly, without judges coming in and being able to sit there and perform their own personal interpretation and create laws and changes to where we can interpret them to where they're going to be much more effective for us today, and not it take 10, 15 years to get something accomplished.
Got it. All right. Well, okay. We got to take our next break, our final break before our last session. And again, please subscribe and check us out on all the different platforms we're on now. And we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor on Third Side Convo.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service. And firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
You know what's the greatest thing about this show is I never know how it's going to work. I could tell you, back in the past, I would have shows and I would leave and Joe Boy and I would sit there and talk. We go, that didn't happen anything like I wanted it to. And it didn't say anything I wanted, but it doesn't matter. Okay, we're continuing to talk, and as y'all know, I had a good friend that won't even talk politics anymore, and that just kills me. We've got to keep talking. So, what would you like to talk about for the last segment? Anybody got anything fun to talk about? I think we've kind of killed the judicial activism. So, who's got something they want to talk about real quickly? But it's going to be something we want to agree with, because remember this thing, Ted. Think about the other side. What are some things they'd agree upon? Go, Ted. Right. You've had a week to think about this. You've had a week since the last show to actually find agreement with people.
Riley, you're right. Social mores, cultural understanding of issues are changing fast. A lot of it has to do with technology. A lot of it has to do with access to information. And it's only going to get faster. And a lot of people have a hard time adjusting to it. They're not used to seeing some of the changes we have coming about. And it's only going to get worse. Now, at the same time, it happened back in 1863 when all of a sudden a black man could ride a horse through a southern town. You know, it was never allowed to be on a horse, but then it could happen. So people will have to adapt.
And then it's like, you know, you're a black man riding a horse, and then it's like, now it's like, you know, the same can be said about like an issue about, you know, boys and you know, women's sports, you know, and then it's broadcast immediately across the world, and then everyone's got to deal with it, right? And you know, sports might not even be played in 25 years. It might all just be in our heads. You know, we might just be literally just I mean,
digitally produced.
I know exactly. No, that's absolutely true.
And it's just gonna keep, like you said, keep getting worse. And like, why are all these governments talking about AI and all these things that are just ramping up to the absolute brink? We're gonna be now dumber than we already are than these things. And it's blowing my mind how I can like look on my phone and just see I can create a general, like an image, you know, and just for a business, or have the whole business plan wrote, submit it to a bank, and it's just that quick, you know. It's wild, you know. It's a wild time.
No, that is.
Well, I would say that one of the things that I think about is and it was something Riley said a minute ago about like things moving slowly and moving fast. And you mentioned like the Jim Crow laws and how for a lot of people that was really hard. And I'm like, and I was immediately thinking, it's like, yeah, for the people living under Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. And those were people who needed really, and those were Americans. Those are American people, American stories. That is an American, an absolute American situation. And those people needed someone to step in. They needed a judge to be an activist locally or someplace. That's what had to happen. And again, the country was being very slow to change. And we still are dealing with remnants of that right now. But that type of judicial activism, especially when you look back on it, it's like there was a moral compass. There was a moral discussion to be had there. And a lot of people at the time thought that moral line was, oh yeah, these races need to stay separated. They knew they were right. They thought they were right. We in the future know that they were wrong. I think we can all agree on that. And I
Michelle.
think that in those,
you haven't talked as much. Go for it.
I do agree though with Station though with regards to, I'm glad that they were activism out there, because you know what I mean, with me being a half black woman, I can jump on that horse and go riding through the, you know what I mean, through the town and through the city and through wherever it is in my neighborhood, and you know what I mean, upset my neighbors. But it's going to be, you know what I mean, a place where it's going to be of acceptance, you know what I mean, based upon the color of my skin. And it's not without those people and those, you know what I mean, individuals that have come before me that have been able to sit there and pave the way for all of us. And, you know what I mean? And I'm in agreement though with Riley and, you know, with Teddy though as well, to where things are changing at such a rapid pace. I mean, it just absolutely at such a rapid pace to where I'm really kind of curious to see exactly where all of this looks like in 10 years from now or 15 years from now. and how we can, as a society, be able to protect, protect our rights, within these ever-changing, quick, scenarios. So we will see.
We shall.
All right, Ted, last thoughts before we jump to the close.
Oh, I personally think that the fact that people put out videos, teams put out videos to announce the NFL schedule shows that we are just in the NFL world. The NFL dominates. We're just living in it. And I'm really sad we've come to this point. I mean, videos about your schedule, really. All right,
I can't believe they put the Kansas City Chiefs on the Thanksgiving Day against the Cowboys. Or no, it's Washington against the Cowboys. Unbelievable, the world that we're in. And you know what's fun is we can come together, we can talk about things, and we can remain friends. That is just the flat out difference. With Uber Discourse, the rule is don't mention the name of a politician. There's, if you want to do that, go on Fox, go on MSNBC, go somewhere else. Don't come on Third Side Convo. I mean, we're the place to go when you want to just listen to people and have them be friends. Please subscribe on Facebook, on thirdsideconvo.com, and our new platforms overseas. And if you're interested in being on the panel, please let us know on thirdsideconvo.com. We'll be back to see you again next week.